like this map?
Yep.
I do. I love this map. Okay, so what we have right here is the Straits of Gibraltar, the Strait of Gibraltar, flanked by the pillars.
Okay, that's what I thought, yeah.
That's the Pillars of Heracles, which mark the gateway between the Atlantic over here to the west, the Mediterranean over here to the east. And there were actually islands in here that are now sunk.
Wow.
Yes. So anybody sailing west through here would have come to islands. Now let's go to this next. Let's see. Well, yeah. So right here, here's from Plato himself. And there was an island situated in front of the straits, which are by you, called the Pillars of Heracles. The island was larger than Libya and Asia put together, and was the way to other islands. And from these you might pass to the whole of the opposite continent,
wow,
which surrounds the true ocean. For this sea, which is within the Straits of Heracles, is only a harbor, having a narrow entrance, but that other is the real sea, and the surrounding land may be most truly called a boundless continent.
Wow.
Yeah, right there. Let's look at this next slide here. Let me back up right here. When we look at this one, Strait of Gibraltar. Now take a look at this one.
Oh, yeah. So is that the Azores up in the top there that's actually poking out a little bit?
Yes, the Azores is this cluster of islands that are actually part of a whole microcontinent.
So you could picture basically all that sort of light blue being above the water.
This light where can you see my cursor? Yeah. That's the Azores Plateau.
Wow.
And here's the Pillars of Heracles, and all in here are a group of sunken islands. So
and then they jumped from those to the middle ones, and then they're saying you can get over to the other continent from there.
Yes. There it is. I mean, right there. That's what I'm talking about. The geography checks out. Here's the Azores Plateau.
Oh.
You could picture that all of the orange would have been above water.
Wow. So how deep is that now then? That's because you think it's sunk. It's like 1,000 feet, 1,500 feet in that area? Or
yeah, the peaks of these mountains are sticking above the waves, and that's the islands of the Azores are the peaks of these sunken mountains.
Yeah.
And they are sunken mountains, yes. That's not some pseudoscience. But one thing is certain, you certainly would have had the 400-foot change in sea level, which means that there are islands now that are totally submerged that could have been above the sea level, and islands that are now above sea level would have been much more extensive when you drop sea level 400 feet.
What about in the Mediterranean then? How did that rise of 400 feet affect the Mediterranean? And does that map that you looked at show anything around Santorini, or is there anything in the Mediterranean that could also be Atlantis?
Well, if again, taking Plato at face value, Atlantis had colonies, and it had outlying, trade networks, which clearly implied we're in the Mediterranean.
Right.
So that's how I tend to interpret it. And also, when you begin to look at mythology of the Western Hemisphere, there's plenty of stuff in there that could be consistent with a migration from the East.
Yeah.
Now if you want to just hypothesize that there was a civilization that rose up on these islands during the Ice Age, the first sea level pulse may have begun a process of destabilization. In fact, what Plato describes is how, the Atlantean kingdom went from being this virtuous and, beneficent place to being corrupted with power and imperial ambitions. And this is what led them to try to come in and subjugate the cultures within the Mediterranean that led to the big war. Largely, the coastlines of the world roughly coincided with
that line.
Right. Although not always, because like I said, there was sometimes this drop off was like 1,000 feet deep. So it would have still been under 400 or 500, 600 feet of seawater.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, the continental shelves, the continental shorelines were much further seaward during the Ice Age than they are now.
North and South America might have been connected more through the Central America.
Well, watch this now. I'm gonna toggle between this map and the next one that shows sea level, I think 350 feet low. So it's a very conservative, but you'll still be able to get a sense of. I particularly look up here.
Okay. Yeah.
Right up there by Alaska,
Yeah.
and look.
Yeah,
what
you got to focus on one area. Wow. Yeah, you got to focus on one area when you toggle back and forth. So do that again a couple times.
And Greenland too.
Yeah. Well, what we'll do.
Oh, it looks like it's connected right there between South and North America down the Baja.
It's pretty darn close. Now watch. We're going to take a closer look at North America. Okay, so here's the present coastlines. Now watch this.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it connects up north even. I mean.
Yeah. And the problem is that there's been a huge hijacking of the science. And it's emphasizing only one interpretation of the science to the neglect of other interpretations. And the narrative now is that human beings are pretty much the sole cause of climate change. And that is about as far from the truth as you could possibly get. We have tons of evidence